you know.
Hi everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. Today it's with Peter Mead. Last week with Barry, I suggested that Peter Mead was the kindest, most delightful person in the whole world. That might conceivably have been an exaggeration, but not very far away. You are actually one of the nicest people I've met in my life, nice being not a derogatory term, and also incredibly smart and knowledgeable about WordPress SEO.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying I'm kind. I think kind is a really important element for an SEO to have.
Brilliant. Now
Kindness
you get the
and ethics. Yeah.
Good point. You get the song. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, the nicest, kindest, and most delightful Peter Mead.
Yeah. Lovely.
Right. Absolutely lovely to have you here. I'm super happy because I love chatting to you. We've done one podcast episode and that was really good fun in a very noisy, was it in Sydney or Melbourne? I can't remember. Sydney,
that was. Yeah, it was.
Right.
It was at the Search Summit and in the cafe, and they brought around all the plates and spoons and cutlery and started jingling them right behind us.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was a great conversation. And that was actually when Gary Illysh explained how Google functions. And interestingly enough, for anybody who's interested, he's just explained it again on Search Off the Record and basically confirms pretty much what he'd already told me a couple of years ago. So the article I wrote turns out to be true, but I knew it was because he'd said it anyway, and he's just repeating it, but 2 years too late. But that was a really good event. Now, before we get onto the real crux of this, it's not WordPress SEO, which was the topic before, and apparently you're now SEO more broad than WordPress.
Oh well, I mean, WordPress is a medium. I love WordPress. I love Matt Mullenweg's approach to decentralizing publishing, and came across WordPress back in 2004 or something, 2005. And it was a fantastic
Oh no, sorry, that's me.
Well, the grey ones are here. And I think that's partially some of the reason why they call me the Godfather. There some people are calling me the Godfather down at Studio Hawk.
Right, only the people who were afraid of you, yeah?
The ones who are afraid, yeah. The ones who love a bit of a laugh. And of course, I'm doing some consulting there, technical SEO consulting for Studio Hawk, and who, incidentally, while we're just talking and chatting here, I thought it's a great thing for me because I'm very proud actually that the Studio Hawk won the best global SEO agency award.
Wow!
At the Search Awards, Global Search Awards. So
the Godfather. Well done to Studio Hawk. That's global, which is delightful coming from Australia, where maybe there's a tendency to regionalize, and getting an Australian company winning a global award is absolutely delightful and positive. Now, talking of global, we're going to look at your brand SERP, because I always do this at the start. So if we can put that first brand SERP up, we've got Peter Mead in Australia, and you've got positions 1, 4, 8, and 9. And a tiny position 3 with one of your images where it actually says, I think it says tweets with your photo next to it. But in Australia, you're dominating. You've got LinkedIn up there. You've got your own site, Peter Mead IT, and 2 other results. Now, what I wanted to point out here is that you've got a decent result with a fairly common name in Australia. If we now go to America, we'll see how completely different it is. You get the tiniest presence in America, as we will see, which is just that tiny Twitter box, which is the image box that says Twitter in it.
Yeah.
Because in America, there are boatloads of Peter Meads who have a great deal of online presence. And the point there wasn't to kind of say, oh, Peter Mead, you're not doing such a good job. It's that actually you're not very relevant in the US, or you're less relevant than these Peter Meads who are from the US, and that people's names are incredibly geosensitive in terms of the brand SERPs they return. and that your aim as an Australian SEO would be to dominate the Australian SERP, which you've done, and your aim as a global SEO would be to dominate every SERP you possibly can.
Yes. So what should I do?
Well, I mean, if I were you, if you're looking for clients in Australia, you should focus on really dominating the Aussie one, getting the videos up there, maybe getting a knowledge panel for you, Peter Mead, the Peter Mead from Australia, who is an SEO consultant. Maybe getting more images of yourself in there. That would be a good one to get rid of the images of the guy from America who really shouldn't be there. Get your site up to the top so that when people search your name, they see you right at the top. That would be what you would do for Australia. I would say that in America, it's a big job that you probably don't want to undertake because America is not going to be a big client base for you. So if you just focus on Australia, where you are relevant, you are helpful, and people will want to work with you, you've nailed your game, as it were.
Right. Well,
free consultation from Jason Barnard on his own podcast.
And it's recorded. Yes. Very good.
So no takebacks. Anyway, today we weren't talking about that. We were going to be talking about all the wonderful people in the industry. Now, I immediately thought a terrible danger here is that if you mention some people and not others, there's going to be some bruised egos or some offended people. So I'm going to choose not to list my number one top favorite people, but you're now about to stick your neck out very far. Talk about influencers and how wonderful everybody is, which is true.
I'm not doing the top 200 Twitter SEO people to follow. I'm not doing anything like that.
Good.
What I'm doing is over the years, people who have made a big influence on me personally, and lessons that I've personally learned from them. And I feel like that could be something that I could share, and other people could get a lot out of that too.
Can I make a really good point? I just went straight down the listing people, bruising egos, offending people, and you're saying, actually, I'm just going to share the people who've helped me and who have helped me move forwards, which is a much more delightful way to do. As I said right at the beginning, you're one of the most delightful people in the universe.
Well, that's really pumping up my ego, isn't it? The people I want to talk about certainly have kind of had an impact on me, and let's find out, I guess. Look, there's many smarter SEOs around than I am. I mean, I just started playing around back in the late 90s, 1997, when HTML 3.2 was around, and then not long after that HTML4 came out. Just started making websites, and then slowly started sinking further into this sort of addictive world of the web and search and what's going on the internet. And because the internet was a real project that I felt. Yeah. And I was really, really sort of excited and caught up in all the excitement of the internet project per se.
Oh, I'll tell you a couple of things there. Is number one, you said it was a project, which I love. And number two, you say it's addictive, which is so true once you get into it. But I remember back in 98 when I started, I was walking down the street looking at people who had like vegetable shops, thinking, why are you selling tomatoes? You should be online. And I totally lost any idea that it was worth doing anything if it wasn't online, which is insane and very foolish.
Yeah. So that is, I mean, certainly back in those days there was some cool stuff happening. Well, should I first start talking about the internet as a project? And of course, so Tim Berners-Lee, we have to talk about him.
Yep.
And people might say, well, he's not an SEO person, but I guess the thing here is, where would any of us be if it wasn't for Tim Berners-Lee coming along, working at CERN, and inventing the World Wide Web for all of us?
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you a story about Tim.
Please.
My friend Tim, I'm going to call him Tim now, is a friend of mine called Hugo. who I actually do know, and I am allowed to call him Hugo, told me a story that he read once that might not be true, is that Tim once said that if he hadn't put 2 dots, 2 slashes, if he'd chosen something else, like // he would have saved 500 gigabytes of traffic over the last 22 years or something like that.
Wow, I guess it doesn't surprise me. I'd never thought of that, but
no, I'd never thought of it. Isn't it very strange?
Absolutely. Well, I guess some of the interesting things that I found, with TBL, if I can call him that, and
I think I should call him Mr. Lee, just to kind of get back on track, because I actually don't know him and I've got no right to call him Tim, and I now feel ashamed.
Sir Tim, and but interesting thing was, as well as kind of inventing the World Wide Web in 1989, and also introducing HTML for all of us, and but in 1998 he was proposing, he had a full proposal for what he called the semantic web, and back in 1998. So how have things progressed? Jason, you're probably much more up with semantic web than I am, but just how things have progressed. And I think it was 2013 when Google started saying, "Hey, we've got this thing we're going to do."
Well, apparently, Sergey Brin, Bill Slawski was suggesting to me that Sergey Brin was saying in 1998, the very, very beginning, he was talking about what we can do is connect books to authors, and they had a little mini engine that just did books and authors, which I would then assume became Google Books. But the idea there was to have this entities connected together, but using books, apparently science fiction books, which is fairly typical for a geek.
Yes. I would like to say the big lesson I have learned from Tim Berners-Lee, I've read the books, and I've really sort of been very interested. But the big thing here is the ethics. And I think that's something which is very important now, because especially, the idea that when the internet was invented, it was all about read and write, and everybody at CERN could read to it and write it. And so to me, the SEO lesson there is the usability and the engagement, not just this kind of one-way sort of publishing, pushing out content, but the ability for people to be able to be engaging with that. The other really important thing for me from Sir Tim is the ethical impact of the web. So privacy and the right to access your own history and the right to be forgotten should be important as well. This idea of decentralization of information. I mean, I guess the sort of thing that's been coming up for me for a lot lately is what is going on over at Wikipedia. What is happening with the content there? It was originally designed as a kind of a democratized version of the encyclopedia, but now it just seems to be, there is information there which is very slanted and has no hope of anybody else editing that information, other than some people who are kind of really hammering down that information.
Right. Oh, well, Wikipedia, I think it's incredibly interesting. I mean, Dixon Jones was suggesting that it's very much biased towards white, male, middle class, educated, and asked them about, he gave the example sitting on Brighton Beach of a pier in Ethiopia, which doesn't seem to me to be something that's likely to, be incredibly important within the Ethiopian culture. But he was making the point that somebody sitting in Brighton who is a geek, who is white and male and middle class, would not know about the pier in Ethiopia and could not write about it. So there's an incredible bias there. And beyond that, the whole thing about Wikipedia is the idea that people will work together to actually be truthful. Rand Fishkin was saying he had his page deleted because, I mean, I love the way he said it. If I asked them what Captain Kirk said in the 15th minute of the 25th episode of the 56th series of Star Trek, I would trust them. If I asked them who founded Moz, I wouldn't.
Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, so for me, part of this lesson is how should SEOs consider the ethics of what we're doing? And I think that's just something to keep in mind. I just think it's worth not forgetting about that. The other person, I think, really in the really early days, I'm not sure, if everyone's really familiar, but he should be, because such important person in SEO was Eric Ward, the Link Moses. And I think...
I'm ashamed. Who is he and what did he do? Link Moses, did you just say?
Link Moses, yeah. So Eric Ward, he's the late and great Eric Ward. He thought of himself as a content linking strategist, and he's very highly respected in the SEO industry by people. I think he had some comments from some testimonials from people. Danny Sullivan said Eric has been educating people about digital marketing and links since before search engines. I think Eric started in 1994, and then Jeff Bezos from Amazon gave Eric a recommendation, because Eric did the very first Amazon backlinks campaign. And Eric said, "Thanks for the great work on our launch. Your efforts and the report was excellent." So I don't know many people who get a testimonial from Jeff Bezos. So definitely, if people don't know about Eric Ward, he's written a book. This is my book that Eric wrote in conjunction with...
Peter has just shown us a very large link building book, which is orange, which is going to become important at the end of the episode.
Yes, it's the ultimate guide to link building, and it's just been updated to a second edition. But he also did this thing, a Link Moses private newsletter, which was a really regular thing, which I subscribed to, and just learned a whole stack of stuff. I mean, Eric was really genuine. The lesson learned here is about link building. He didn't call himself a link builder; he called himself a content linking strategist. And his idea was to be really genuine with your link building approach. Right. And but he's got this fun thing on his website. You look it up, ericward.com, and have a look at the 10 commandments of link building. It's really fun. Maybe I'll read the first one. Which is, the first commandment is, link us not just to seek favor from Google. If your site's success dependeth on Google alone, it shall destroy you, or worse, be featured in the knowledge graph without attribution. Oh, the irony.
Right. Okay. So that's worth looking up. Eric Ward, the 10 Commandments, Link Moses.
Yes. Definitely.
Brilliant, wonderful. So, I mean, the most delightful 80s photograph with kind of fluffy, feathery hair. He looks handsome, delightful, and young more than anything.
Yeah. So definitely had a big influence on the way that I approach link building. Some other people I'm going to talk about too did as well. But so the next one is actually not one, it's three. It's the authors of another book. The Art of SEO book. I'll hold it up for anyone looking at the video, but on the podcast, the book is called The Art of SEO. And the authors are Eric Enge, Stephen Spencer, and Jessie Stricchiola. And so I guess for me, this was fundamental. I mean, it's up to its third edition now. I think Brand Fishkin was author on the second edition, but it's up to its third edition. But for me, this was really instrumental in the way that I approached my SEO campaigns. And so the lessons learned from the authors in the book is all about strategy and how it's so important for every SEO strategy to be customized and documented. Now, this idea, we don't want to have a cookie cutter approach to SEO. We don't want to turn SEO into a commodity. We want it won't work. It doesn't work. What we need to do is have a really clear and documented strategy around what the organization is promoting, what services, products, or content. Consider the target market and use detailed personas if need be to understand the market. Consider their brand, their copy, their messaging. Website structure, get into that. What's the strategy around their site architecture, the navigation, the URLs, the file naming? Also how flexible and scalable is the CMS? Is it going to be hard to work with? Is there a CMS? What's the strategy around that? What resources will be needed? What about for editorials, for resources for a content calendar? How can you successfully develop the content? And don't forget about really putting the effort into your competitive landscape. So this really made me take a step back and have a look why this is so important before diving into launching and executing on SEO, which I think is a common. Is that what's your experience, Jason? Do you think it's common? People will often dive in without doing that strategy.
What I find, and it's one of my slight moans about the world in general, is people leap in with competitor research, and there's this kind of jealousy syndrome, envy syndrome, it actually is, and business owners are like this, so I can see why an SEO would want to do it. But it's saying, my competitor has something, I want to get what they've got. And I would be much more into kind of this idea that you're talking about, which is looking at what do we have, how can we build from what we have outwards using a strategic approach with all these pragmatic points you just made, build all that into building out towards where our competitors are, rather than trying to hit where our competitors are right off the bat, because we're going to be overreaching ourselves, and we're just going to fall down and break our legs. That was rather rotten, wasn't it? That wasn't a very good analogy.
Well, we might. If people fall down, they might break their legs. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I love the point of a book like The Art of SEO saying, let's take a strategic approach, but within that, we've got all these pragmatic areas we need to look at, and we need to look at them pragmatically and build them all together as a strategic approach. And as with, once again, with how ranking works, which Galeriadis explained, was you can't have one very weak element. You have to have everything reasonably strong, because one weak element, because of the way the algorithm functions, will pretty much cripple you.
Yes. Yes. Well, speaking of rankings and things like PageRank, I would like to now talk about Bill Slawski.
The wonderful Bill Slawski.
Because, yes, absolutely. Fantastic. There's no denying he is prolific in the industry. But he's been in SEO since the mid-90s.
Right.
I think if people don't know, he's the director of search marketing for Go Fish Digital, and he's the editor of SEO by the Sea. And that's really where I got into, is the SEO by the Sea. But what makes him a thought leader, I think, his extensive work with unpicking and dissecting the Google patents and helping us to make sense of that. I think the lesson for me, the really kind of standout lesson, which spun off onto a whole bunch of other things, it was the reasonable surfer model explained.
Right.
And this idea that PageRank, PageRank can be passed based on the probability that a user might click the link. And, some of the factors could include things like the color, the size, the font, the anchor text, the surrounding content and the context of that link, and the position within the page. So for me, this really further kind of highlighted the issues with the idea of the pure DA-based approach for backlinks,
Right, and what's interesting there is, as soon as you say, I mean, when we explain kind of how PageRank works, we say, the probability, and anybody who's even slightly not interested in maths immediately goes to sleep, walks out of the room, slams the door, and won't ever talk to you again. But if you say it's based on the behavior of what a reasonable surfer would do, you've got everybody on board.
Well, yes, that's certainly There we go. Well, the more people on board, the better, I guess.
Yeah, sure, 100%. I mean, I actually taught. I mean, maths is something I was reasonably good at school. Statistics and all that stuff, and bores most people senseless. And I speak from experience because my ex-wife and my daughter both hate maths with a great passion. And if I ever say the word probability, I can guarantee I will be alone within the space of about 3 seconds.
Probability, statistics. Yeah, it's good fun. I enjoy. But I think, really the key lesson here is to go after well-placed links, on quality websites, relevant websites, which are likely to send traffic. And I think that kind of sums it up a little bit there.
In which case, you're getting the link because it's sending you valuable, relevant traffic rather than because it ranks, and the ranking is a bonus.
Yeah, rankings in themselves. What was the most recent thing I saw about vanity metrics? Anything can be a vanity, depending which angle you approach it from. But certainly my next thought leader, who really helped me and taught me a lot, is Aleyda Solis.
Ooh, delightful lady.
And of course, renowned and respected international SEO consultant. And of course, I was fortunate enough to meet her at the SEMrush Summer Jam in Sweden, which I was also fortunate enough to be invited to, and very thankful to have been able to be there and attend that and meet Aleyda. So I guess
hence the SEMrush jumper. You're a big SEMrush fan, which is now we've got Anton behind the scenes working for Doodah now and not for SEMrush. So was that a bit of a there's Aleyda Solis?
Yes.
Great, and it's her knowledge panel.
Great
Anton's
knowledge
pulling up knowledge panels just to make me happy. Right, sorry, carry on. So Aleyda Solis in Sweden at SEMrush Summer Jam.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess if people don't already know, jump on to her. It's the SEO FOMO. She has it's a newsletter. She has Crawling Mondays, but she also wrote a book which I bought. This one, it's called SEO La Claves Essentiales. Right, the whole thing's completely in Spanish, and I can't read a word of it.
But you like looking at the pictures. Yeah, that sounds like.
Aleyda wrote it, so I bought it. And
brilliant stuff.
And
I mean, the one question with Aleyda is, I always ask myself, is how on earth does she find all the time to do the newsletter, the Crawling Mondays, all her work, writing books, traveling the world, giving these talks, preparing new slide decks pretty much every time you see her? She doesn't sleep. She doesn't eat. She doesn't go to the beach. She doesn't.
I've seen her at the beach.
Oh right, okay. Sorry, I went on a. Actually, you might have been there too. We went on a boat ride around Sydney Harbour. That's downtime. Oh right, yeah. I was on that. Looking over the side of the boat, watching the sharks. Aren't there lots of sharks in Australia?
Oh yeah,
right.
Very scary ones.
Yeah. So I was looking over the side, hoping I wouldn't see a shark. Anyway, sorry. Onwards and upwards.
Well, one of the things which really struck me is Aleyda's very mature approach to international SEO, as far back as 2013, actually, where an article she published on Moz, which was the International SEO Check, and so I think for me the big lesson is about international SEO strategy, because we see lots of businesses jumping right in. They get sort of dollar signs in their eyes and decide that, there's a great big market available over there in the UK or in the US or in Asia somewhere. Let's dive in and start trying to get business. For me, it's do the research before jumping into any multi-region or any multilingual website. And but then if you're going to dive in, if you've done the research and it's proven that you will that there is opportunity there, that is really if you're going to do it properly and really localize that content to the target audience with the proper translations and cultural considerations. For example, things like in the USA they have Thanksgiving. Well, in Australia we know about it because we've seen it on telly, but we don't really have Thanksgiving. So things like that.
And another thing is that you guys would say telly, as I would in the UK, but Americans don't know what telly is. They just think you don't know how to spell jelly. So,
That's right.
So all these cultural differences are incredibly important. I think what's weird about a lot of the people I talk to is, as a user, as a client or a potential client, they get really upset or they laugh their head off at something very silly that they see on a site. But then they don't think about how other people in other countries might think about their content when they leap in feet first and just do it as this kind of mass job. And so what they need to do is call Aleyda and ask her what they should be doing.
Absolutely. Definitely. I would totally agree with that. So little segue is across from Aleyda is across to the MozCon. And of course, now I'm going to talk about how Rand Fishkin made an impact for me.
Can I ask a question before it carries on? Because what Anton's doing is putting up these knowledge panels incredibly quickly when you say the name. So I suspect that you've given Anton the list of people, and you haven't given me the list of people. So this is a surprise for me, but not for Anton.
Well, it's a surprise for me too, that Anton is so efficient at figuring out and Googling for who I'm talking about. Because
hats off to Anton. Brilliant. So back to Rand Fishkin, who wasn't wearing a hat but has a very nice, delightful beard.
Yes. And I think MozCon, SEOmoz.org is when I first discovered Rand, and since sort of 2004, where he's been doing so many things, is definitely a pioneer in the SEO industry. Brilliant SEO, but I think he sort of built Moz into this institution, and I guess though the thing here is what actually happened when the toolbar PageRank was taken away and people needed somewhere to turn. Everybody was sort of browsing, Googling with the toolbar and looking at the PageRank. Oh, PageRank 4, this isn't too bad. And this kind of thing. After that, I think, this idea of domain authority really became a thing. And for me, I think the lesson here is the lesson here is yes, domain authority is a made-up metric, and we've got people who are really sort of pointing this out. But I think Rand is 100% correct that yes, it is a made-up metric, and for a specific reason. I guess to be able to kind of have a way of being able to sort of predict or estimate how likely a website is to be able to rank in SERPs. And I think perhaps, this is such a controversial topic about DA, domain authority, but when you have a look, say Ahrefs, they have this idea of DR. It's a metric, and SEMrush has made their metric and called it AS, authority score.
Yeah.
And so I think the real key to this lesson, and I think Rand is really pointing this out here, is to recognize that it's a metric for helping to sort of rule of thumb to measure things, and to keep this in perspective.
Right. Yeah. And one thing that does strike me is that we should, and we are moving away from the concept of a domain or even a page, and moving towards what does the brand stand for? How well does Google understand the brand? How credible is the brand? So we're starting to look at brand authority, which I would argue means more than domain authority, simply because you're saying, in fact, the domain, you can leave it behind you, but your brand, you can't. A brand is for life, a bit like a dog. But from that perspective, we're moving towards brand authority. And at Kalicube, I actually started trying to measure it. And I had a score for brand authority, and it was delightful. Okay. And then I retired it very quickly because I don't want to get into the kind of discussions about how relevant it is, how meaningful is it, because people, as with kind of all these measurements, think, oh, it's an attempt to emulate Google. And he's saying, no, it's a rule of thumb to try to get a handle on relative positions of all these different brands, in my case, domains in theirs. And getting into that kind of argument just seems like a phenomenal waste of time. So brand authority, Kalicube metric, now retired, will never come back.
Really?
No.
I'm kind of interested to see that.
Oh dear, I shouldn't have said anything, should I?
The BA, the BA score.
Oh yes, oh dear. Right, okay, delightful.
Get a link from that BA.
Can we move on, please?
Yes, okay, moving right along to somebody who I consider, I think there's so much we can learn from Olga Andrienko, Vice President of Brand Marketing at SEMrush.
Who has been building their brand authority for years and years and years. Yeah. And as we know, everybody knows about SEMrush in the industry. Brand is incredibly important. She's incredibly good at her job.
Absolutely. And that is exactly, I mean, I think Olga is definitely a thought leader, although maybe some don't think of her as an SEO per se, but what she did over those years, really since 2013, is expanding into over 50 countries and doing a whole bunch of things, setting up things like I was fortunate enough to go to St. Petersburg for the White Knights SEMrush meetup and really met a whole bunch of people, and it furthered my knowledge. And I was able to contribute to the tools. And this is probably the most really important thing, I think, for us to understand. She sort of gave us this platform for content, for webinars, people like Anton, who really made this possible and drove this forward, this professional platform for learning and knowledge sharing. And which is way more than just an SEO tool or a online marketing tool. And so she made us feel like we're really involved and invested in the tools we were using. And so the lesson really here is for SEOs and digital marketers is it's vitally important to empower your community by having them involved and engaged. Involve your audience, the more publicly, the better. Regular communications and touch points, and ask them for feedback. Ask them what could we be doing better. And so I think it's really phenomenal what Olga has achieved so far, and it's definitely some lessons to be learned from her approach for the rest of us.
Brilliant. And one thing that strikes me about all of that, what you just described, is it's in French. There's a word called fédérer. And that means to bring people together in a group around a common kind of theme. And what I heard there, or a common idea. And it's federating, and it's bringing them around this idea, bringing them together to discuss, and it moves the whole group upwards with not a leader, but one person or one entity pulling things along. And that sounds to me very much like federe.
Okay. Well,
I've never found an English equivalent word, but if somebody's got it, please ping it in the chat.
Yeah, some words can't be translated, can they?
No. There was another French word, which is lagnac. And lagnac is having vital daily energy in a positive manner without being pushy and aggressive.
Okay. How would we put those words on our international SEO campaigns? I don't know. You have to use a lot more words to do it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, niac as well in French is N-I-A-C. It's a really short little word, and it means so much. I mean, it's bigger than drive, the American word. It's drive with enthusiasm, with joy, with daily keep going without pushing or without bullying other people. And I love that word. So lagnac and fédéré are two French words that I've never found the English equivalents for, and I love both words a great deal.
Nice one.
Moving on.
Let's talk about Dan Petrovic.
Ooh. So
Dan, Dejan, I think is the proper pronunciation, Dejan. So he's an Aussie, okay? He really sort of is what I would consider a pioneer, one of the original pioneers of the Australian SEO industry. And I feel like why Dan is a thought leader for me is he's just shared so much about his own journey, his tests. He's tested all these sort of crazy theories and wild experiments in public forums, and some of his tactics, and just hasn't really made any bones about it. And really culminating with what happened when his website, dejanseo.com.au, it was penalized, given a manual link penalty. Even though he said he hadn't really been doing any link building for years, but it was a bunch of old kind of links from years ago that ended up getting him penalized. And so he shared that whole thing. There's in the public forum, on tweets and on websites, and there's lots of articles that people have written about it. But on his new site, what he ended up doing was migrating his whole website across and building a whole new website, and he sort of blogged about the whole thing there as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I don't know him particularly well, but I did see that particular experiment, and it interested me is because he even lost his homepage on his own brand SERP. Now, that's some major smackdown penalty, because to lose your homepage on your own brand SERP once it's established means that they've absolutely assassinated the entire site completely and utterly, which is major penalty. Because even with a penalty, a lot of sites will retain their homepage ranking on their brand SERP. It's kind of all the stuff around that will tend to get penalized. And big hats off to him for sharing it and not being kind of like shy and retiring about it, because it's valuable and helpful information for everybody else.
Absolutely. And the lesson, really, the lesson I'd like to talk about is from Dan, is about links, and the way, I guess, because even sort of this idea that old links from years ago can somehow come back and cause you to be completely blown out off the internet. And but the big sort of lesson here is the safe and scalable link building outreach tactics that Dan talked about, and he really put a lot into this. About engaging the target audience before even publishing. Using surveys and social media and direct outreach to people, specific people, and then the idea also of structuring the content so it is link worthy. Really so that the article is a really good source of news for journalists or bloggers, so that there's data, there's graphs, so that the information is well researched. Something that's going to get people who are able to give a link to want to go and give a link. And and then, of course, the idea of this outreach per se, not thinking about outreach and, in an email saying, I noticed you, could you please give me a link, something like that. But much more sophisticated, using, targeted paid outreach and also manual outreach to people who can give a link, and using multiple channels, even so far as things like, if you've got an email list of people, put them into your remarketing campaign, and on your PPC, and get that content in front of those right people, and give them a reason to want to give you a link. So
super duper. I mean, I've never been one for link building anyway, so you're preaching to the converted here.
Yeah. I think no worries. Look, the last. I mean,
what I do like, this is the last one, and you do this brilliant thing. It's like we're on some kind of reality TV show, and you manage to present things while spreading it out. So we're going, who's the next name? Who's it going to be? Off you go, Peter.
Well, actually, you may be surprised to know the next one is Jason Barnard.
What? No.
Well, I want to, because I want to hear. So I want to. I mean, you're blushing, are you?
Yeah, I'm as red as my shirt.
Look, Jason has over 2 decades of experience. He's been around for quite a while doing this kind of things. But Jason, why are you a thought leader? Well, I think you're prolific at sharing information about SEO, particularly in the last, recent few years, about the brand SERPs. And I think that's something. It's really kind of this whole area of knowledge which is being promoted for us that you're doing, and it's furthering that information for all of us. So my lesson here from you, Jason, and please tell me what I've forgotten here, but the idea that the brand SERP best practice. So customers are going to Google your name at some point. And the brand SERP should be accurate, it should be positive and convincing. You should go for features like videos, images, and Twitter boxes. And tell me if I'm on the ball here, the knowledge panel is the grand prize of the SERP, of the brand SERP.
You put that delightfully well. No, that's exactly it. It needs to be positive, accurate, and convincing. Google, your brand SERP on Google is your business card. The cherry on the top is the knowledge panel, but actually it's not really the cherry on the top. It's now necessary, both from a human perspective, because when people don't see the knowledge panel, they think that's not an important major company, the brand SERP guy. And the other thing is, when you don't get a knowledge panel, you're missing out on all what's coming next, which is entity-based search. Google's looking at entities. You're missing that big step. Is how can Google possibly build an understanding of your offers if it doesn't understand who you are, what you're doing, who your audience is, which is exactly what's driving Discover. And last point, you shouldn't have got me started on this. That was a total mistake. Is I was writing an article for SimilarWeb, because I'm going to be doing a webinar with them. And I wrote this whole article, and right at the end, as I got to the end of the article, which is about the same thing as all the other articles, brand SERPs and knowledge panels, I was actually looking at, expanding it out to universal search and content on third-party sites, which I think both are very much underestimated in the SEO community today. But right at the bottom, it was all of this work, all of your customer funnel has one destination. And that destination is going to be, sooner or later, your brand SERP, because somebody who is going to end up at the bottom of your funnel, potentially converting, is going to be searching your brand name at some point. So is this kind of logical destination of that entire funnel work that you've been doing is your brand SERP, and most people don't even bother looking at it or optimizing it or trying to make it look positive, accurate, and convincing. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Terrific. No, I totally agree. I think a lot of people are far too concerned with ranking for those non-branded search terms, and which this sort of came up for me, where I locked heads with people years ago, back in probably 2013 or 14 or something like that, and kind of had an argument because I was in my reports for clients, I was putting in there your brand search terms,
right,
and and I was told, no, we don't get paid to rank people for their brand search terms. And
no, 100%. And there is this thing, we don't get paid to do that. There isn't any value. We can't provide any value, so we're not going to do it or pay attention to it. And what is interesting there is what I'm talking about is nothing new. It's just I talk about it so much that people can't ignore it anymore.
I think it's fantastic the way you put it forward. So that's why I had you down as one of the industry thought leaders. How's the clock? How's the clock?
The clock's looking great, and my face is now slightly less red than it was a minute ago. But I'm honoured to be in that list, and that was a great list. I don't think any of those names would be amiss. I mean, I agree with all of them, except perhaps the last one. But that's me being modest, as whatever it would be. But that was a great idea, and I didn't really realise what you were going to do, and I'm so glad you did it, because it's a lovely little walk through the influencers. That's what it is. When you said thought leaders, I thought influencers, and you don't mean influencers, you mean people who lead thought forwards and move the industry forwards, which is a very different thing.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Now I'm going to announce next week, which is going to be Russ Jeffrey, talking about the fallout from core web vitals. He's incredibly obsessed about that, and I did a webinar with him on Duda, which is slightly strange, and we didn't plan this at all, because if we show the next screen, we have Anton, who is now at Duda, and we did not plan to have a Duda representative on 2 weeks after Anton started his new job. This is completely lucky coincidence. That's the word I'm looking for. So wonderful stuff. Thank you very much, Peter Mead. You get the outro song. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.